Hello, folks. Thank you for tuning in to the Childcare Director's Chair podcast. And I have a question for you. Do you know that there are approximately 265 children ages 3 to 5 years old in the United States that have been diagnosed with disabilities? And there's a good chance that one or more of those children are enrolled in your child care center. As I said, my name is Erica Sicoscio. I'm the host, and you are listening to the Child Care Director's Chair podcast, where we bring you insights and expertise from leaders in the early childhood field. Today is no exception. We are honored to have a special guest, Kelly Tagg. She is a dedicated public school educator who specializes in working with young children who have special needs. With years of experience in the field, Kelly offers a wealth of knowledge on best practices for supporting these children and families. And today, we're going to discuss how teachers, administrators, parents, and specialists can work together to navigate the complex challenges faced by children with special needs and ensure the best possible outcomes for every child. So welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell folks a little bit about how you came into the field.
Well, like a lot of people I've heard on some of your other podcasts, being in education is a really good schedule with your kids' own schedule. So I started off as a substitute teacher, and I've done various things in the teaching realm, like teaching online and things like that. But I tried general ed, middle school. That wasn't for me. And then that's when I got into special ed preschool. I like the age better. I really like, working more with kids one-on-one or in small groups. So that's in a nutshell how I came to specifically special needs preschool.
Okay, awesome. So what do you think are some of the common challenges that educators face when they're working with children who have special needs, and maybe how can they be addressed?
Well, they're going to have different needs and different things that maybe you could try. So, for example, a child with autism, they're going to repeat a lot, do a lot of the same things over and over. A lot of the kids have behavior issues or have to learn, or if they have any kind of developmental delay, that also means a delay in learning the things that they need to learn as far as how to behave correctly. And, also another thing specifically with autism is they have trouble playing with other kids or trouble sitting still. So maybe not expecting them to sit, in a circle time. Part of my job not only is in the school, but I go and work with kids one-on-one in daycares and their homes. And I've seen some daycares that will allow this one kid, they allowed him to kind of roam around the room while the rest of the kids were doing circle time. So, I would say maybe having different expectations, especially if you know or suspect that they have some kind of special need.
Yeah. What do you think about, because this, obviously this is a conversation that happens in childcare centers everywhere. So what do you think about if you know what that child really likes and tends to like a sensory table or coloring or, a sand table, those types of things? What do you think about having those materials available to them open during like any times that they're feeling overwhelmed, or even if the teacher just feels like they give that as an option, like you said, during circle time, where they can't really tend to as long as the other students, because sometimes you'll hear, well, they're disrupting the other children, right? So you've got to kind of meet all the children where they're at. What supports can we do? Obviously allowing them to, as you said, be able to freely move through the classroom. And honestly, best practices really, especially if it's play-based program, is to really kind of do that. But maybe even just having some other materials that the child can engage. And I talk about this in one of the videos that I had made. It was around Eckers and Itters, but Just because a child isn't sitting at circle doesn't mean they can't hear you. So they can still hear your instruction, but their body is telling them they need to move, they need to do something else. But I still can hear you whether I'm sitting on the carpet or, 2 feet away. That's why I always recommend, like, is there something else that we can put out so that the child can still hear what's going on, but be able to manipulate? Because sometimes too, just that being able to manipulate things helps calm the child so then they can tend. But you're the expert in that. That's just my experience in real life practicality of some ways to help support your teachers. I feel like even before we get to, and we're going to dive into like IEPs and all that, I would say one of the biggest challenges, and maybe you can help us, is when you have a child who has not been diagnosed yet, because especially if we're working with really young children, hasn't been diagnosed, doesn't have an IEP, and the parents are not on board with screening. What's your best, because this is definitely everyday care USA, especially now after the pandemic. I hate to say that, right? And so we're trying to figure out, is this behavioral, or is this like a delay? Like we're trying to figure out, does the child have some control over this or do they not?
Right. Well, start with yes, I do think it's a good idea to have something out, like the sensory table that they could do during circle time. As far as telling the parents, that's a tough one because they say like the stages of death. It's at the preschool level, most of the time, that is when parents are first finding out that there is a problem and in their minds, they have a healthy child. So that is hard to hear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're the first one kind of telling them they're at the stages of grief. The first stage is denial. So nope, not my kid. No, there's nothing wrong. That's tough because you can't make them.
Yeah.
Maybe suggest just to see, we're not sure, but why don't you try going to this doctor and just get a screening just to make sure, early intervention helps, or just kind of keep gently passing along the
Guiding. Yeah.
information if they won't do it at first. Hopefully, that over time that they will. But that's a tough one because you can't make them do anything, and only the child's hurt. But on the other side as well, that's hard for them to accept and to hear.
Yeah. So maybe in my experience, because and I brought that up because I've had to have that conversation
Yeah.
multiple times in the last half a year. I thought about, could we incorporate information about screenings just in a parent letter, like so that it isn't like your child, but here's best practice, here is what you can do, here are some signs to look for, and so that it's more easy to intake the information, so it's not specifically about your child, but can help that parent start to become aware of, oh gee, I've noticed these things. So, and then having the contact information there, because maybe they'll do that on their own. Maybe they won't, but like you said, at the end of the day, as educators, it's so hard because we know that every year you delay in getting services is so hard to recover for the child. So most of us are very well meaning when we have to have that conversation. So all right, so let's say we've got the parent to the point where they've done the screenings and they have an IEP. How do you approach building effective collaboration between the teachers, the parents, and admins and specialists? What's your best way, or your most effective collaboration strategies?
Well, if everyone could just remember this is about the child, and we all want what is best for the child, and just a lot of communication, I think, between the parents and between admin, and it would help also, if we could understand each other's roles. So if maybe admin could understand what the teacher's going through, and the teacher try to understand where the parent is coming from. A lot of the times the parents, well, it could go one of two ways. Either the parent is in denial and my child needs no services, I don't want any, or they want every single service that's out there, which is hard for the school to provide. If the child needs it, then obviously, the school is obligated to provide it. But then sometimes it's the parents just want as much as they could give. So I think everyone needs to just remember we're all on the same page. We're trying to get the best for that child. Um, and to try to understand each other and communicate, if there is a problem in a nice way. It never helps when there's yelling or name calling or anything like that.
Yeah. I feel like we were really lucky. We just recently had a trainer come in and do ABA training for our staff. And I felt like it was so eye-opening, and I have been in the field a long time, but I felt like it was so helpful to our staff because it allowed them to try to set up their environment so that everybody could be successful, no matter, especially because we have children at all different, parts of, if you have a mixed age class, if you have 3, 4, and 5 year olds, that's a big span, right? Or even if you have just 3 year olds, they're not all at the same, same place. We've got some that are potty trained, some that aren't, some that are verbal, some that may not be. So I found that the ABA training was really helpful for our staff. And then I feel like it also helped them have a better understanding of things that they could do in the classroom that again benefited everybody. Um, yeah, what strategies do you recommend for educators?
Well, I think what you did sounded really good to have an ABA therapist come in and show everybody, because that way you're not singling out children. And a lot of the practices they have can help any child. When my own daughter, she wasn't in special ed in preschool, but when she was in special education, I know the person just tried to help everybody. And so that would help. But then other things you can do specifically at preschool is, like have centers with sensory, but have it for all the kids. So it's not just the special needs kids that are at the sensory table or, working with the poppet blocks, but kind of everybody,
Hmm.
or, have everybody try these strategies, calming down, and then these kids won't feel singled out and it won't be like it's you.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's good. I think what's nice too is when you have a specialist come in, it I hate to say this, but sometimes when your staff hear things from you and when they hear it from someone else, it computes differently. And it could be the specialist, the way that they present it. It could be just it's a different voice or a different approach. So that's why I did it. I was like, I will call everybody that I can and to support my team because they need supports and my kids need supports and it's the right thing to do, and I certainly don't think I know everything, so especially in in the special education field. So yeah, I think anything that we can do as leaders in our program, we should be doing. And I think when we talk about that collaboration, especially if you're not based in a school, like reach out to the school and say, what can we do? How can we partner? Invite people from the school to come in, early intervention, child outreach, those folks, make them feel welcome and open the doors and even get their feedback on, what do they think? And when you do have those specialists come in, ask them for feedback because I think a lot of times it's like, oh, not my program. Oh, because I've seen that too where they give teachers suggestion and they're like, nope, that's not going to work. I'm like, well, you haven't tried it, and it might take more than one time for it to really sink in. I laugh. I'm like, how many times have I told you to wear a uniform? But yet here we are, right? So sometimes it takes more than one time for something to so something to click or become a routine. So, what is the role of the specialist, like speech therapists or occupational therapists? What is their role that they play in supporting children with special needs?
Well, usually each one has a very specific thing to work on. So obviously speech is working on the speech, and the physical therapist is working physically, and then their case manager or um, teacher, special ed teacher, is working on, communication goals or developmental delays to try to get them up to speed, or work with them to try to help them develop as best they can at their speed, is the role.
Okay. Um, so let's talk about maybe the importance of IEPs, right? Everybody uses that word IEP, IEP. So let's talk about children who have IEPs. What does that mean for the child care center and the team? What is their obligation there? Have they even been part of that? Because there have been times where I have had students come to our program that have had an IEP, but I wasn't any part of the conversation when they developed the IEP. So I was never asked the strengths, the weaknesses, what we could add, like what we could bring to the table. So let's talk about that. What's your best advice as somebody who in your center there, are you work at a school? Is it in a school or you go out to programs?
Well, yes. So actually, I'm in a public school. So if children, especially if they have high enough needs, they could go to a preschool at the public school. I'm sure it's
Hmm.
different depending where you live. But I work in special ed preschool in the school. But
Okay.
this past year, I was doing that half day, and then the other half of the day, I'd work with children one on one, either in their homes or their daycares. So I was able to see what went on in daycares as well. Um, as far as your question, well, unfortunately, daycares don't have to follow IEPs. So that's the thing public schools do. But I would encourage the parents, if your child is a part of a daycare center, involve them in the IEP process. So I had one little boy that I was working with. He was in a private preschool. He's one of the ones I was seeing outside the school. And we did get his daycare's input, tell us about him, strengths, weaknesses, what else. And the parents invited them to the IEP meeting. So the parents can invite who they want to the IEP meeting. So I would suggest inviting your daycare, getting their input. I had another child whose parent invited the ABA therapist because she worked with him quite a bit. And then it was great because in the IEP meeting, we could see that we were all working toward the same goals. Like I said, oh, this is one of his strengths. The ABA therapist would say, oh, well, I've actually been working with him on that. It's like, well, great.
Yeah.
So my encouragement is for parents to invite them, because the public school system or child find who's doing the IEPs, they're not going to know to invite the private daycare unless the parents tell us.
Yeah.
So, mhm.
I'm going to say to all the childcare owners that are listening and the directors, if you accept a child that has an IEP, I also encourage you to ask to be part of that planning and be part
Yeah.
of that team. So you don't always have to wait for that ask too, although you're right. We should encourage parents to invite us, but if they don't, that should be part of the conversation on enrollment is if your child has this IEP, we really should have some part in that because if we're expected to implement it. So high quality programs, and again, like you said, it might be different where you live, but high quality programs absolutely try their best to implement what they can with the resources that they have. I think, yeah, I think too, um, some families really prefer, as strange as it sounds, prefer the private setting because of continuity of care. Like schools are closed during the summer. You guys closed during vacation weeks. You're closed during snow days. So for working families, sometimes a private facility makes more sense. And then there's also a lot less transitions because there's a lot of conversation right now because of the state funded pre-Ks that are expanding and exploding through our country. But what does that mean for 3-year-olds at 2 o'clock? Right? Are they now transitioning to after school programs? And that's a whole another episode. But my point is so that there is that consistency for the child if a family decides that a private setting is in collaboration with the school department the better choice. And I think a lot of people are talking about that right now, so that's why I thought it was important to bring that up, that as childcare owners should be asking to be part of that meeting to make sure one, it's a good fit for the child, the family, and and the teachers, and can we give the supports that are needed, and if not, what community agencies are there to supplement that piece. So that's
I
my
would totally agree with that.
yeah,
Yes. Hmm.
yeah. So how do you stay motivated and focused on providing best outcomes for children?
Oh boy. Well, you just go in there every day and say that you want to help this child. It is actually motivating when you do start to see progress, and then you say, okay, we're seeing progress. Let's see more. And then that motivates you with other children. Like, look, you saw the progress that you made with that child. Let's work with this one. And that is the beauty of kind of working more one-on-one or smaller groups like I do with the
Yeah.
special needs kids is you can see that progress. Mhm.
Yeah.
And there sometimes there's children where, especially in special needs, you won't see progress for a long time, but then boom, all of a sudden they'll
Mm-hmm.
blossom and they'll
Yeah.
just start showing progress.
Yeah, we have a teacher. Her name is Miss Leah, and she has a son, Oren, who's autistic, and he's been with us for, gosh, probably about 5 years now. And now he's 9. He's part of our after-school program, but just watching him grow and the way that he has made friends and interacts with other children, and the other kids absolutely love him. And so I think it's such a wonderful thing to see how typically developing peers and children who have special needs really collaborate and work together organically. It really is awesome. That's kind of one of the things that motivates me and really helped me decide to be, an inclusionary program and do my best to make sure that we could help as many students as we can. Not every child's going to be the right fit, but the ones that we can, we definitely will do everything we can because it is very rewarding when you see their changes over a period of time. So, what do you think are some common misconceptions about working with children with special needs?
That they can't do certain things. They can. It might take them longer to learn. Don't write them off or that they're unintelligent. They're not. They just maybe learn differently or they need different strategies to learn those types of things. And they can, well, depending on the needs, but they can grow up and be just typical kids by the time they get to college. But again, that depends on their special need.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, so I have a author and motivational speaker who's on our podcast right after you today, and his name is
okay.
Shannon, and he is autistic and legally blind, and this
Wow.
guy is out there speaking, representing the autistic community in a way that is just so inspiring and amazing. And I think I'll probably release your episodes back to back because that feels good. Feels like that would be a great pairing. Because yeah, I'm with you. Do not write them off. They can do amazing, amazing things with the right supports and the love and care that we should be giving. What advice? Yeah, what advice would you have, or that you would give somebody who's working with children who has special needs and they really want to make a meaningful impact? What advice would you have? Let's say you're talking to, I don't know, somebody who's brand new at being a childcare director, right? This is their first year. You're doing so many things, you're juggling so many balls, but you're really excited about this new role that you took on. What would be your advice?
Well, to childcare directors, be open to taking children with special needs. You could make a huge difference, not only in that child's life, but you are also teaching the other children in your daycare center how to be open and inclusive and how to get along with people who are different from them. You know, be open to implementing new strategies and don't be afraid of it. If ever a child has needs that you can't take care of, you can always refer them to the public school, but don't be afraid to try it in your daycare center first.
Yeah. And I would say not even just, and the children obviously is the most important part, but as a parent, I'm a
Mm,
parent, you're a parent, and I would say at least 50% of the folks who work in this field are parents, right? Let's face it,
yes.
that's kind of how we all many times end up here. Imagine if that's your child. You would want everybody to do their best and you would want to feel included in a community as well. And so that's why I think having supports and doing things that are meaningful and reflective, like sharing information in your parent newsletter, having workshops at your school, doing things that they feel like they're part of their community, just like the typically developing children's families. You really need to make them feel included and not like they're a burden on your school, or, every time they get called to the office, it's, you have a problem, and the child didn't sit at circle like you said. What are the good things you can find? And I feel like I might have shared this story once, but there is a student that we had at our program, and he's not diagnosed yet. He is 5. There's a good chance, I'm not a doctor, there's a good chance this child has ADHD. We'll find out in the next year. But I called the dad into the office and I said, "Hey, I want to talk to you for a minute." And he had been let go from another child care center. And I called him in the office. His body language just changed. The shoulders dry. He was like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Hey, I want you to sit down. I need you to really hear what I have to say." And he sat down. He's like, "Yes, Miss Erica." And I said, "I want to let you know your kid is awesome." I said, "I love working with your child. He is fun. He is inquisitive. He is a ball of energy, but he's so joyous. Every day when he comes in, he's like, 'You're so beautiful. You look nice today.' Like, he is just so kind, and he's empathetic to all the other children." And he started to cry. He literally, this grown man started to have a tear down his cheek. And he said, "Miss Erica, I have not had one teacher in my experience, and his child's only 5, who had anything nice to say about my kid." And I was floored by that. And so it really makes you think that, be aware of these conversations that we're having with families, because it's not only impacting the child, it's impacting that family, that parent, and they're part of our community. Like, I live in my city where my center is. Like, they're part of my community, and most of them end up being part of my family. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Yes.
the whole, when you look at the whole child, you have to look at their support systems, and you're part of that, and you have to really, do what's right. So, is there anything, Kelly, that you want to share with the audience that I haven't asked you, or you think is really important for folks to know?
Well, piggybacking off what you just said is to, when you have a child with developmental delays or special needs in your class, don't just focus on what they can't do, focus on what they can do, because as a parent, you end up hearing, "Oh, your child hasn't met this milestone, they're not doing this or that." And that's why that one parent just lit up when you said the good things, because they're not always used to that. So whether you're, a special needs teacher like me, director, try to focus on what they can do, focus on their strengths, or lead with that before you tell them what they're doing wrong. And that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, guys. So, before we wrap up today, I would like to ask, I have an ask, if you could please, if you love this content, you love our channel, and you haven't had an opportunity to go give us a review, please give us a review on your favorite listening platform. It's really important. It helps us bring wonderful folks like Kelly here onto the show and continue to produce great content for you. If you have any other questions about this, please leave it in the comments below. We'll try to get the answers for you if we don't have them. Kelly, do you do anything where people can reach out to you, or you're just out here kind of spreading the message of how we can support each other?
Yes, I have a YouTube channel called Teacher Kelly Tag, and I talk about all things teaching, not just special needs. I have a lot of guests on my program, so even other aspects of teaching that I don't know about, I can bring guests on to talk about. So it's about all things teaching.
I love that. I love that. So, folks, make sure you hop on over to Kelly's channel as well. Give her a like, subscribe. We're just small content folks out here trying to support everybody in the ECE field, and we appreciate you and thank you so much for tuning in today. And remember, it's the little things that make a big impact on the success of your childcare business. Thank you, and as always, have a great day.